Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and also to another video. And so in this one I want to go through some really easy to do and really interesting watercolor effects that you guys can use and apply to your artwork to make it a little bit more interesting. So anyway guys, let's get started. Okay, so the first technique is something that I use absolutely loads in my watercolor work, and that is using the wet on wet method. And this is great if you want to create those out of focus, colorful backgrounds, or just have lots of colors merging and bleeding into each other without any harsh edges. And to do this, all you need to do is pre-wet your paper and then just drop loads and loads of colors on it, and you'll get a really out of focus look as long as your paper was initially wet. So the next effect is the wet on dry method, and this means that you basically keep your paper dry. And so this is great if you want to keep more control over where your paint goes, but this will give you more sort of harsh edges and sharp edges, and it won't bleed the colours out and into each other quite as much as the wet in wet method does. But like I said, it's brilliant if you want to have more control over where the paint goes, and you can create some absolutely beautiful effects with this sort of technique. So the next kind of technique that I'm going to be using is using my water brush pen to create a gradient, and this can be a really beautiful result where you have a color that starts off quite strong and intense and then it fades away to this really light shade. So this can be great for certain backgrounds, and it really is quite simple to do, so I definitely recommend trying out going strong with a lot of paint at one end and then just bleeding it out with your paintbrush and more water. So the next technique is using masking fluid, and masking fluid is an absolute must for watercolor. And what masking fluid does is it blocks off certain areas of the paper where you don't want to get the watercolor on it, and it basically means that wherever you apply that masking fluid, the watercolor won't go on those areas, so you can freely paint the background or whatever you want to do without getting any paint on your subject. And so you can also splatter the masking fluid or create different textures and effects so that you can get some really interesting effects, but it's also just great for just marking off different areas that you don't want to get paint on. So here I'm just demonstrating some circles that I did roughly, and you can see that wherever I applied that masking fluid, the paint didn't go on those areas, which is really useful. And masking fluid is an extremely cheap thing to buy, and you can get so many cool effects with it. So let's move on to using salt, and salt is an absolutely brilliant tool to use for your watercolor work. And as you can see, all I've done is put a bit of salt onto some watercolor, and you will see just how much of a beautiful kind of technique and effect you can get just with salt. Look how beautiful that is. It looks like snow, and you can use it on your winter landscapes or anywhere where you want snow, and it's absolutely beautiful. So if you want to create even more texture in your work, then you can go in with a little crafting knife and just basically pull up all of the watercolor. If you've already created a layer, you can go in with that knife, pull up bits of the watercolor to get some really cool textured effects. Like if you were drawing trees and you wanted to draw bark and create lots of texture, then you could just use your knife. It would be really cool and give you really nice texture. And you can do this in lots of different ways. You could create like physical texture by actually cutting into the paper, or you could just scrape the colour off. It's up to you, but there's so many different ways that you could use this knife to create texture and to create some really cool effects just by using a knife and applying a layer of watercolour. And so definitely have a little experiment with that and see what effects you can create. So the next effect is one of my favourites, and it is using cling film. And cling film is a really cheap household item, and it creates the most beautiful effects ever. It's definitely one of my favourites, and so I'm just arranging that cling film, and you will see when I take it off, look how beautiful that effect is. It's absolutely stunning, and it's one of my favourites. It looks like ice, so you can use it for like stems of plants. So many things you can use this for, and it's just a really cool effect in itself. Another really cool effect is using a paper towel, and a paper towel is probably something you have around for your watercolor painting anyway to like blot off your paintbrush, but you can see that you can just use that on wet watercolor to lift it up and create some really cool like highlights and blotchy sort of effects. And if you have more texture in your paper towel, then you can get even more cool textured effects. So another effect that you can create is using splatters and drips to add more interest to your watercolour work. And this is something that you'll see me do all the time, just create splatters just to add a lot more interest, and I just love creating splatters. And you can use things like straws to blow around the watercolour. You can use a toothbrush to like spray on the watercolour so it looks like just like sprayed blood effect or something like that, and it's really, really cool. But anyway guys, those are all of the effects. Let me know if you have any more that you want me to try. And I've also got the real-time versions of this available on my Patreon, as well as where I talk about all the materials I use for my watercolours and how you can go about choosing what materials you use. And I also am going to be painting a landscape in real time, applying all of these techniques. So if you want to make sure that you see that, then check out my Patreon. Anyway guys, that is it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, why not give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos. But if you want to see even more stuff right now, then I've got some over there that you can check out. But I hope you all have an absolutely amazing day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye everybody!